Hi, my name is Shelley Biancon. I live in Australia after travelling from Canada a little over 20 years ago. I live in Willimantic, Victoria with my husband Dean and my two children, Naomi and Ethan. Growing up in Canada, my mother especially had a lot of family, and so we had a lot of big extended family. And even though she married a man from the city, we spent a lot of time in the country, so I was very familiar with animals and whatnot. She tried to make her way home to the country, and at that rate we kind of moved around a lot. So yeah, and so then by the time I was hitting high school, we had established ourselves back near the homestead in Burleigh Falls. And Canada, look, it's a beautiful country, and it didn't matter where you were, whether you were in the city or the country. It was basically, you know, people were very similar. Although I suppose the country people, they say, the Americans especially would say we're a little bit simpler in the country. Oh, I didn't think so. I thought, you know, I came from the city, went to the country every weekend. People were people. Sort of being naive at the time, I suppose. I was very young. I was 16. I'd moved out on my own. I met an older man who I became involved with, who became extremely violent in the latter. We were together for probably 3 years, and I think it was because I was so naive in that I got involved not knowing, and it got to a point where the relationship became very dangerous, and I became afraid for my life. And so in finding that I had a friend who actually was traveling, she was in Australia, and she had said, come to Australia. It was difficult to choose exactly where I was going. No, I need to rephrase that. It wasn't difficult to decide where I was going. I wanted to come to Australia, but I suppose it was difficult knowing that I was leaving a lot of my important things behind, and going for 12 months without a happy type leaving. I mean, when people go away, I know, you know, certain people, they get a visa, or, you know, they go away, it's happy time, you know, yay, they're going away, they're going to go and they're going to be working, you know, going to be on a little working holiday for 3 months or for 4 months. I was leaving under a cloak. I was leaving under, you know, the night of in the darkness. I was sneaking out. I was getting out, and I felt as though it was very dangerous, because I'd been threatened several times. I'd been threatened that if I left, that he would find me. He'd find me and he'd hurt me. I tried to leave a couple of times, and it didn't work. He found me, and I was hurt, and I didn't want to go through that again. And it was a typical, I suppose, problem scenario where some people have, I guess they're a little bit sick in their own self, where he would cry and say, oh, look, I won't do that again. And so I would get sucked back in, or in the end, I just felt scared. I was just really scared. So I just stayed. And I stayed, and then all of a sudden, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I started ticking over and thinking, I have to get out. I've got to get out for the safety of me and myself, for my future, for my family. And so I started to plan. And I planned everything down like you would plan a wedding. I planned the phone being cut off at noon on the day that I left. The dog that I loved like a child, I planned for him to have a home. I didn't leave anything out. I was very meticulous in the way that I had to plan and escape. And I remember getting on the plane, and it's like it was yesterday. And I was just there. I was nervous wreck. I'm just there, like, just please take off, you know. I was like, just get me off the ground, because I knew he wasn't on the plane. I knew there was nobody that he knew on the plane. And when the plane took off, I started laughing like a little kid. I was just laughing and thought, got away. And I'm free. And you know what? I'm going to make a hell of a run out of this, because this is a big chance. This is a big chance, and I bloody just got it. So I never looked back. I didn't look back. I remember flying here thinking that I was certain that there was going to be kangaroos jumping next to the plane as we were landing. I was certain that it was going to be a gravel runway and people were going to be wearing funny hats. It was much to my surprise and my delight when we landed in Sydney and there was a large city and everything was civilized. I didn't feel isolated at all. I felt the Australians were very welcoming. You know, they're quite happy to. I was a single girl too. I was footloose and fancy free. I just really enjoyed the company of all kinds of people in Australia, and I realized that, like Canada, Australia was a huge melting pot. You know, I always thought that Australia was they're all English type people. You know, Australian English, whatever. But coming here, no, it's all kinds. It's similar to Canada. I got a phone call one day, and it wasn't a young Italian man. If I would have known probably on that day, I probably would have hung up on him. But this young man called, and he wanted some information, and I asked him if I could help him, and he was insistent that he needed to speak to one of the boys. And so I was insistent that he was very rude, and that if he didn't give me the information, that I wasn't going to pass it on at all, because I was very capable of helping him. So reluctantly, he gave me the information, and so I began to then give him, answer his questions. And from there, he began to call me and have conversations with me, and him and I struck up a friendship. So he was a solace, he became an extremely good friend, and we spoke every night on the phone. We were there for maybe 2, 3, 4 hours. Sometimes I would hear the click of the phone, and his father would pick the phone up and, "Are you still on the phone?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, I'll be off in a minute." We'd be on the phone for another 4 hours. And so after probably 6 weeks, we decided to meet. And it was then that when we met, that it was, I suppose, an instant attraction. We were best friends at this time. He and I struck it off, and I was totally in love, head over heels in love. And so we decided that I wasn't going back to Canada, that my visa had run out in December, but we decided that that I was going to stay. And so here was an Irish Canadian and an Australian Italian starting a new life. Yeah, and it's been fantastic. We just grow together, we're strong together, we work hard together, and I wouldn't be anywhere else in the world except here in Australia, because it's the best place to raise children, and I'm really happy to be here, and I wouldn't give it up. So I suppose at that age, you kind of really learn a quick reality of things sometimes. And I think that helped to toughen me up too. And I think a lot of people who, again, you sort of develop, I suppose, a character where you can handle certain things. And I think these are the type of people who actually immigrate or migrate. They have to have that reality in their brain that things are going to go wrong, and life isn't always sweet and rosy. I really don't think the princess type person would ever make it. You just wouldn't. They wouldn't. You got to be tough. And so I respect people who migrate or immigrate. I have a lot of respect for them, because it's tough. It's the real world. You face things that just want to make you cry sometimes. They're shitty, but you move on. You just sort of look for the good things and you move on.